Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Jennifer Mitchell, and I am in charge of all the district's educational resources. Today, we have Dr. Eric Marzoff, our Director of the Division of Water and Land Resources, helping us to take a deeper dive into the district's mission of natural systems. This is the third of our district core missions webinars, and we will continue this webinar series through the summer. Look to our website for the opportunity to sign up for the future webinars. Next week, we will have a deeper dive into our district's core mission of flood control. So please be sure to join us for that so you can see all the various ways that we are working to accomplish that. A few housekeeping pieces. You will all be on mute throughout the presentation. However, do keep in mind that you can enter questions into that question box throughout the presentation, and we will have a question and answer period at the end of this presentation. And if you are having any technical issues of not being able to hear me, then you wouldn't be hearing this. But a lot of times, if you log off and log back on, then you're able to get that audio. So this presentation, oops, scrolled too quickly. So we are one of the 5 water management districts in the state of Florida, and it is our mission to ensure water availability for both the people and the businesses and our natural systems. And so since we all depend on water, both the individuals, our businesses, and our natural systems, this core mission of those natural systems is a really important piece of what we do at the district. In order to accomplish that, our ultimate mission, we have 4 core missions that everything we do falls under one of these 4 core missions. You have heard and you're able to watch the recorded webinar from Dr. Shortell talking about our water supply and how we accomplish that. Flood protection will be next week. Last week, you may have tuned in for our presentation about water quality and how you're able to become a more informed citizen and see what all we have going on in terms of that monitoring and projects. And then today we will focus on our natural systems. And to me, the natural systems is one of the ways that we're able to accomplish all of these core missions all at the same time. So many of our natural systems in Florida are those wetlands. So they allow cleaning, they allow flood protection, and they allow that water to move more slowly. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Marzoff, and he's going to give us a little bit more detail about how we're accomplishing this mission of natural systems.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for tuning in and your interest in the district's efforts. The map on the right shows the district, and what's important here, I think, are all the different watersheds of all the different waterways within us, primarily defined by the watershed of the St. Johns River and its tributaries. The district is also home to nearly 150 springs, which includes 8 priority springs. And we also have 2 coastal basins, the Northern Coastal Basin and the northern 2/3 of the Indian River Lagoon. One of the ways the district protects waterways and meets its core missions is by conserving and restoring lands. The map in the middle shows our ownership in yellow, and you will note that it's largely along our waterways. When viewed in terms of size, the pie chart in the upper left, you can see that we have ownership in near a little over 750,000 acres, most of which is fee simple, meaning we're the primary owner. The remainder is in some sort of easement, often a conservation easement. Those lands, we've invested over $1.25 billion in acquiring those lands. In 2012, we did a very detailed assessment of our land portfolio, and you can see some of the highlights of that on the right. The majority of our lands ownership, 2/3 is wetlands. Nearly 3/4 is within the 100-year floodplain. Nearly 80% is the highest value natural communities within it. And 60% represent priority wildlife corridors. So our lands are providing benefits not only to our waterways, but to our terrestrial systems and ecosystems as well. So now let's look at how we use our lands to benefit our core missions. First, water supply. The largest water body in the district is the Floridan Aquifer, which is where a majority of residents get their water. Some of our lands are in areas of high aquifer recharge, which helps preserve the ability for rainfall to replenish the aquifer. One way we encourage recharge is by unditching our lands so that water has the time to move into the aquifer rather than quickly running off the surface. Another activity on our lands is vegetation management, which reduces the water loss to evapotranspiration. So by properly managing vegetation, we provide more water for aquifer recharge. For our water quality mission, wetlands are key. They cleanse water, capture nutrients and sediments before the water reaches open water. The image on the top right shows an area in the upper basin where on the top of the image is a wetland we've restored, but you can still see the traces of the former agricultural operations. The picture on the bottom shows what that area looks like if you were there from a boat, where you really don't see the old remnants of the agricultural operations, but they're still visible from the air. Our wetlands reduce nutrient runoff, and they also provide important buffers for our water bodies and floodplains. Our natural systems and water quality goals are often very tightly linked. We develop many water quality goals based upon the recovery and preservation of the submerged aquatic vegetation. This might be Sagittaria in a spring run, eelgrass in a lake or river, or seagrass in the Indian River Lagoon. Submerged vegetation is often a critical part of an aquatic natural system. And our water quality goals are often driven to reduce nutrients enough so that we remove algae, so the water is clear enough that sunlight reaches the bottom and allows that vegetation to grow and provide the critical habitat for so many fish, crabs, and other species. The photos on the bottom, you can see an area where the water isn't terribly clear and there's not a whole lot of vegetation. On the right, a crab within some seagrass. And then the chart on the top shows a relationship we see in many areas, whereas you get more submerged vegetation, in this case seagrass, you see more species that are of interest to us, here spotted sea trout. In addition, water quality goals are often set to limit the frequency, duration, and intensity of harmful algal blooms. These blooms are particularly problematic in surface water bodies that are used for potable water supply. Many of our water quality projects involve natural systems restoration. Across the top, you will see a treatment wetland we built to treat stormwater runoff from an agricultural area before it reaches the St. Johns River. Then in the other two top images are from the north shore of Lake Apopka. The first is when this former floodplain marsh had been diked and drained and put into cultivation. And the other is after we've restored this area to wetlands, and in the process dramatically reduced the nutrient runoff from the area to Lake Apopka. On the bottom, you see pictures of muck dredging in the Indian River Lagoon, where bottom habitat is improved by removing organic muck, but which also removes a large source of nutrients to the water. The next photo on the bottom is a photo of the harvest of rough fish from a lake, which is a means to improve the overall fish community structure and is also a highly cost-effective means to remove nutrients from lakes. The last example is another use of a wetland, in this case to filter new water, in this case from Lake Apopka, stripping the particulate matter and returning the cleansed water back to the lake. We often consider our water quality goals to be accomplished by nutrient load inputs, putting the water body on a diet, and by removing existing nutrients from the waterway, like from dredging or fish harvesting or a treatment wetland, and that's putting the system on a diet. We use natural systems projects to accomplish both of these water quality goals. Our flood protection mission is supported by our acquisition of floodplain wetlands. These wetlands seasonally vary between dry and flooded and provide a natural location to store floodwaters that might otherwise be headed downriver too quickly. The ownership of these properties in an undeveloped state also means we're not trying to prevent flooding of homes and businesses in these areas. Here's an example of one of our properties, Seminole Ranch. The photo on the left shows it in a relatively dry condition. The middle image shows as it's a little more flooded, and we've calculated the volume of what that storage could be at nearly 150,000 acre feet of water. Or I'm sorry, it's 127,000 acre feet, which is roughly similar to our recently constructed Fellsmere Water Management Area. However, our floodplain properties do this without constructing and maintaining levees. So to summarize, our lands provide many important services: wetlands protection that provide water quality treatment and nutrient attenuation, and also flood storage. In spring sheds and in watersheds, these lands provide buffers and places for aquifer recharge to occur. While providing all that, they provide valuable wildlife habitat, both on the land itself and as corridors between other conservation lands. And of course, because our lands are open to the public, we provide an important public use and recreation opportunity. So what are some of the activities that we conduct on our lands to ensure that all these benefits are sustainably provided? First, we work with a lot of partners, and I'll have a future slide to address that. We invest in a lot of restoration and land maintenance activities. That can include the use of fire. We also address invasive and/or exotic species. Some of our lands are forests that we manage for both silviculture and habitat. Because our lands are open to the public, we have to invest in security and infrastructure for public recreation. And in a few places, we provide for leases and special uses by folks to use our properties. The image on the right is an example of where we use agreements for beekeepers, and they can be particularly useful in places where people maybe have been dumping things. That tends to stop when we have beehives there. So I mentioned partnerships on the previous slide, and I just want to give you an example of that. Our conservation land ownership is not in a vacuum. The yellow box on the map in the middle is blown up to the right, and our properties are shown in blue. And you can see that our lands are part of ownership by many other public entities that create a patchwork of ownership. And we work very closely with all these other conservation land owners to ensure that our management across all of this landscape is to the benefit of all of our missions and the people of Florida. Much of Florida's landscape is fire prone, and even to the point where it needs fire to be maintained in a healthy state. Our land managers are experts in the use of prescribed fire to enhance and restore ecosystems. And now we go to the moment of truth to see if our video plays.
Fire has always been a part of nature in Florida, and most species are not only adapted for it, they depend on it for survival. Each spring and summer, wildfires ignited by lightning would sweep across the state, burning away dense vegetation and allowing new seeds to grow. Today, because of highways, homes, and businesses, and public safety, such wildfires can no longer be allowed to burn freely. St. Johns River Water Management District land managers conduct periodic prescribed fires as a safe way to apply a natural process to ensure ecosystem health, to meet the needs of many plants and animals, while also reducing the threat of wildfires. Prescribed fire is used to reduce hazardous fuel buildups, thus providing increased protection to people, their homes, and the forest. Other uses include disease control in young pines, wildlife habitat improvement, range management, preservation of endangered plant and animal species, and the maintenance of fire-dependent ecosystems. Fox squirrels, gopher tortoises, scrub jays, red-cockaded woodpeckers, wiregrass, and longleaf pines are just a few of the many species that depend on fire. Prescribed fire is one of the most versatile and cost-effective tools land managers use.
Prescribed fire is a way to use a natural process to ensure ecosystem health and to reduce the risk of wildfires. Each year the district tries to do about 50,000 acres of prescribed fire, and that enables us to do things like maintain ecosystems for listed species like pitcher plants, scrub jays, red-cockaded woodpeckers. It's an important tool, and in some ecosystems it's almost as essential as rain and sunshine.
On our uplands, we restore native forests to buffer waterways, provide aquifer recharge space, take up CO2, and provide habitat for wildlife and space for us to recreate. Periodically, we're able to harvest some trees, and those revenues are earmarked specifically for future land restoration work. Sometimes we acquire lands that were once wetlands, but were drained or ditched and converted to uplands. As we restore these to wetlands, we begin by restoring the natural hydrology and then work to encourage native wetland species to return to these areas. Being part of a good land steward is not to let invasive and/or exotic species dominate our properties, or let our property serve as a host to infect our neighbors. We use a diverse toolbox to battle exotic species, and we're always on the lookout for new species that can harm our natural systems. Our lands provide the public a place for dispersed recreation. We typically have parking on the perimeter of a property, and that is connected to trails for hiking, biking, horseback riding, and other passive activities. We are proud that a majority, roughly 98% of our property, is open to the public. Public use requires us to provide security, recreational structures, and unfortunately, sadly, the need to pick up after a small minority of people who don't cherish our lands the way we do. As we mentioned earlier, being experts in prescribed fire means that we're trained to have the equipment to fight wildfires and are part of Florida's emergency response team. District staff have not only deployed all over Florida following disasters, but all over the country as well. Finally, to summarize how we manage our public lands, another video.
The St. Johns River Water Management District is one of 5 water management districts in Florida. Formal water management began in 1947 in response to several deadly hurricanes with the establishment of flood control projects. In 1977, the missions and footprints of the water management districts were expanded to cover the entire state. The boundaries of the districts are established along drainage basins. The districts have 4 core missions: water supply, water quality, flood control, and natural systems. The St. Johns District, which covers the northeast fifth of Florida, serves as an environmental regulatory agency of the state of Florida, whose work is focused on ensuring a long-term supply of drinking water and to protect and restore the health of water bodies across its 18 counties in northeast and east central Florida. As part of its work, the district has fee ownership in about 600,000 acres of public land and is the lead manager of about 420,000 of those acres. Lands titled to the governing boards of the district shall be managed and maintained to the greatest extent practicable in such a way as to ensure a balance between public access, general recreational purposes, and restoration and protection of their natural state and condition. Purchased to protect water resources, more than 314,000 acres, or 74%, are wetlands. The other 26% of those acres is uplands and includes flatwoods, prairies, and hardwoods. Staff within the district's Bureau of Land Resources are stationed across 8 offices and field stations to keep them as close as possible to the land they are managing. About a third of the staff are responsible for managing invasive plants, while the remainder have traditional land management duties. Both wetlands and uplands in Florida are fire dependent. According to the Florida Natural Areas Inventory, half of all the plant communities identified in Florida require fire for their perpetuation. Fire management includes maintaining fire lines, preparing for prescribed burns, conducting the burns themselves, and suppressing wildfires. The district partners with other agencies to fight wildfires and conduct safe, prescribed burns. To meet these fire demands, the district has assembled the following array of personnel and equipment. Maintaining and restoring ecosystems relies on another important tool: controlling overstory density and species. Our forest management efforts include overseeing contractors, loggers, spot checking the inventory to ensure the contractors are performing quality service, developing harvest plans, and preparing sites for replanting. Proper forest management allows us to provide for healthy ground cover, which ecologically benefits a host of both plant and animal species. One of our more difficult challenges is controlling invasive species. Invasive plants share several characteristics. They grow quickly, propagate easily, resist native pests, and were introduced to the state without the diseases, parasites, and other natural enemies that would help control their growth in their natural settings. District staff use a variety of methods to control invasive species, including biocontrols, prescribed burns, and herbicide applications. We continue to look for biocontrols to help reduce costs, but the primary way to control invasive plants is herbicide use. Land maintenance activities consist of tasks such as maintaining the interior road system or repairing bridges. The road systems on district land are not merely for public use or recreation. Roads are also essential to district work, such as being able to move timber when it's sold, provide fire management access, or other management or restoration activities. 98% of district land is open to the public. Portions are closed to public access while undergoing a restoration activity or when the district doesn't yet have legal access to accommodate the public. While all public properties allow hiking and wildlife viewing, some properties also allow fishing, horseback riding, and boating. A few properties feature observation towers, boardwalks, and bridges, group campsites, horse steps, boat ramps, and canoe launching. 66% of district property is open for hunting. A very popular way to use district land is wildlife viewing, especially at the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive. This 11-mile-long drive is a unique way to experience district property, attracting 40,000 vehicles with 100,000 people every year. In addition to the land's water resource protection values and recreation, these lands are home to many restoration projects. Restoration projects have included harvesting seeds and planting a variety of native species to restore areas to a more natural state. Some of these restoration projects are focused on providing habitat for listed species. Most of the listed species in Florida are fire dependent. A lack of fire at the right interval contributes to the decline of some of those species. The benefits to ecological health, water supply, water quality, and flood control that district lands provide reflect on the overall land management program and the staff who care for these public lands every day. Training, research, and following best practices ensure that the St. Johns River Water Management District properties are under good stewardship.
Well, with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that people might have.
Great. And for those of you who are watching this webinar live, those videos are available on our YouTube channel, as are several other videos that have been put together. And for those of you who are watching this recorded, we'll get that video in there so that you're able to watch it. We do have some great questions coming in. We have one about, is there an effort to purchase land that's creating corridors for wildlife so they're able to move safely from one conservation area to another?
Absolutely. Looking at wildlife corridors, those that have been identified in Florida Forever projects are part of the criteria we look at when acquiring land. So absolutely, that's considered.
We also have a question about the role of our natural systems and restoration work with consideration of our springs and thinking about the spring sheds within our district.
Good question. One of our most recent large acquisitions was the Silver Springs Forest Conservation Area, which was purchased specifically for help in preserving Silver Springs, Silver River. It's just north of the Silver River, so absolutely being aware of spring shed boundaries, which is one of the part of understanding how to conserve springs and protect them, is to understand the limits of their spring shed. And we have got good maps of that now. And so we definitely pay attention when we have the opportunity to acquire land, whether it's going to help with the water quality and flow from springs.
Fabulous. You had mentioned the flood protection opportunity that so many of our district lands provide. Can you elaborate on how that flooding also helps those natural systems to maintain their integrity as the floodplain?
Certainly. I mean, for floodplain wetlands to keep their natural characteristics, they need to be flooded at particular intervals for particular durations and at a certain frequency over time. And so our conservation of those lands allows the river's natural fluctuations to inundate those lands and maintain those wetlands so that they're able to provide the other water quality benefits. I think I'll just leave it at that.
That sounds great. No, it's a wonderful opportunity. And you also mentioned the opportunity for recreation. What's the best way for people to find out which properties or where the properties are and how to access them and what they can do on those properties?
The first place to start is our website. If you go under the menu to lands, We have information about how our land management plans. We have a whole tab on recreation opportunities that are available on different lands. And so I would start at our website. It's full of maps, guides, information on what activities are best suited to which properties and where they're located.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And then my last question for you is one of which of our properties or which ecosystem in the St. John's district is one of your favorites?
Oh dear. I'll show my bias. When I was a scientist more, I was working on the north shore of Lake Apopka after we acquired it, and seeing it transform from intensive row crops to the vibrant wetlands that are there now. Seeing that transition, working on that transition, I think that makes it probably my favorite, but it's hard to choose between so many beautiful spots.
Absolutely. Well, and that does lead into a nice point of the North Shore Wildlife Drive is back open. I know that a lot of folks are excited to have that open as it's one of our most visited properties. And I hope that during this time of social distancing that everybody does take advantage of the opportunities for this free recreation that is available through our district properties. And Dr. Marzoff, I really appreciate your time today. I am not seeing any other questions coming in. And if there are any other questions that you have, feel free to enter those now. We'll wait for just another moment. But I really appreciate everyone tuning in today, and I appreciate your presentation, Dr. Marzoff. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all for your interest.
Have a great day.